I come to you with tales of woe. Tales of extreme woe. No, I come to you with some straight up bullshit. We were recording the podcast that I do with Julian Gressel, who plays for Inter Miami. Humor me here, being a creator for a second. We've created a YouTube channel for that podcast, the Player Manager Podcast. If you just want to check out more of my forehead sometimes. But now that we're done with the 20 seconds of me doing actual content creator stuff, back to the nonsense. He made me aware over the course of recording the podcast today of a story that I just absolutely have to share with you. And I'm going to share it with you because you probably miss out on this nonsense because you don't follow MLS. Now, MLS is a league particularly prone to rule-induced nonsense. You might be wondering what I mean by that. I'm talking about the fact that MLS and its rules are beyond absurd. I mean, everybody knows that, right? Everybody understands implicitly that the rules in MLS are impossible to understand. You need a PhD. You need a business degree from Harvard, a law degree from Princeton, a doctorate from Yale, all at the same time to begin your tutelage to understand how targeted allocation money works in MLS. I talk to MLS players, I talk to MLS journalists, and even they struggle to understand at times what is happening when it comes to different roster and kind of contract rules. But what you probably didn't know is that usually incredibly boring bureaucratic nonsense can produce incredibly funny situations like the one that happened to Columbus Crew a couple nights ago. And this is important, by the way, because before this match, which Columbus Crew obviously lost for reasons that we are going to get into in a moment, the tomfoolery they were subjected to. They are a match in hand and now 10 points off the top of the Eastern Conference, which means that if they had won this match instead of, losing it, they would have been 7 points off with a match in hand, which is incredibly doable, right? That is still well within striking distance. This is just the fifth loss for Wilfred Nancy's Columbus Crew in 26 matches this season. They've been a very good team, but unfortunately for them, they were not very good on this night. And in their defense, it is really hard to be good when you don't have a goalkeeper. Now, how on earth does Columbus Crew end up without a goalkeeper? Well, this helped. In the 45th +2 minute, Columbus Crew had Abraham Romero sent off in a match against Seattle Sounders, after which Seattle scored 4 goals, including the free kick right after the red card. Now, this is because Columbus did not have a goalkeeper on the bench. Now, I realize that this sounds like some football manager bullshit, right? Like that this is some sort of tomfoolery, right? I love that word, that they're trying to get one over on the man by coming up with this crazy roster solution and then their goalkeeper gets sent off. No, I'm actually, I'm not really making an argument for anything. I'm going to try and point out the fact that Columbus kind of got screwed here. Because first, if you use your noodle, right, that thing that just happens to bounce back and forth between your ears, causing CTE eventually if you play American football or head the ball too much. Well, that thing, if you just try and pour some WD-40 maybe in your ear like that and get it going again, you'll remember that the international break's been going on. You see, as much as MLS is a different world, the international break is still going on at the same time. That is something that's going to put Columbus Crew in a particular pickle, particularly because they're missing their top 2 goalkeepers. First off, you have Patrick Schulte, who's called up with the United States, and the backup, Nico Hagen, who's called up by Guatemala. They're both gone. Now, normally, there wouldn't be a match in the international break. Even though MLS plays right through summer international breaks, they actually planned on leaving this international break in September as the holy international break, where they wouldn't be playing through it. Now, don't get me started. It's very stupid that MLS plays through international breaks to begin with. It is a league that has a lot of international level players. And then when you have to play through an international break, that can oftentimes make or break an entire season. Who can withstand losing their international players? It's like having multiple, Asian Cups a season instead of one Asian Cup every 4 years that gets in your way when you have a good player in the Premier League, for example, or an AFCON happening twice a season instead of once every 2 years, right? That's what's happening over the course of the summer in MLS. But this match was rescheduled because Columbus Crew made a good run in the CONCACAF Champions League and it bumped one of their league matches into this international break, apparently. So their top 2 goalkeepers are gone. Now, obviously, every self-respecting team has 3 goalkeepers that are paid that full first-team salary, that are just generally around. The third goalkeeper is not somebody that's used often, but maybe in a pinch, and this is definitely a pinch. But the third goalkeeper, Evan Bush, has been injured most of the season. Got injured very early on in the season, hasn't been around all year. He's on the roster, but he's just down and out for the count, and he totally can't play. Which means going into this match, they're out their top 3 goalkeepers. But, have no fear. Any self-respecting club, which would include every club in MLS, right? Columbus Crew, has a reserve team, has youth teams that they're going to be able to call up youth players from. Well, boy, do I have some news for you. And that news is called a collective bargaining agreement. Because you're right, Columbus Crew does have 2 goalkeepers that are close or somewhere in the neighborhood of professional quality that play on their reserve team, right? Two players that are on the reserve team in the reserve league that wear big oven mitts and stop the ball every once in a while, sometimes even with their hands. The problem is that their names, Stanislav Lapkus and Cole Johnson, had already been called up 4 times. What does that mean? Well, in the collective bargaining agreement between MLS and MLS players, I realize this is kind of a very American concept, at least when it comes to sports, but the players have like these associations that negotiate with the league and divvy up revenue and come up with different rules that are trying to protect players, basically. And that's the argument. Now, as part of that, in MLS rules, like in the Constitution of MLS, right under John Hancock's signature, right, is the fact that you can only call up players that are not under full-time, professional, protected MLS contracts that meet all the requirements laid out in said Constitution of what is an MLS contract. They can only be brought into the team 4 times a season. And these 2 goalkeepers, both Lapkus and Johnson, have been brought up 4 times already this season. And the reason is particularly stupid. You see, CONCACAF, that thing that like runs North and Central America and the Caribbean and decided on a name that's just so funny to say that nobody will ever take it seriously. CONCACAF has a rule that you need 3 goalkeepers on your bench in the Champions Cup, the Champions League of CONCACAF, right? So you have to have 3 goalkeepers. Evan Bush is hurt. They basically rotated bringing up Lapkus and Johnson as the 3rd goalkeeper throughout their CONCACAF Champions League run. And that used up the call-ups for both of those guys, which meant if they called up Lapkus or Johnson one more time, they would have to take a reserve goalkeeper and give them a full contract, a full professional contract that would cost them tens and tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $100,000 over the course of the whole thing being paid out, depending on how often the player plays and whatever. I don't know the base contract for MLS players, but I know that there are a lot of different guaranteed stipulations if you're going to be given that contract. And they obviously didn't want to do this. They made it very clear they didn't want to do this. So they traded for Abraham Romero. Abraham Romero was, I guess they kind of decided on him being the most palatable option. He's somebody that's never made an MLS appearance before, but if you look at his career history, he was on LAFC's reserve team. He was on the Las Vegas Lights in I believe, USL. He played for Orange County. He played for the LA Galaxy reserve team, right? So this is somebody that has been known. He's a 26-year-old goalkeeper, and they traded for him on August 14th for $50,000 worth of general allocation money. Somebody in the Columbus Crew organization decided that that was financially the best move. They did this because they saw this match coming. Okay, they knew that Bush was out. They knew their top 2 goalkeepers were out, and they knew they couldn't call up their 2 reserve goalkeepers to fill this spot as well. So they decided they needed a different goalkeeper, and they traded for Romero, basically. And they added Romero to their team, essentially to play this one game and maybe serve as a backup, like the 3rd string goalkeeper for the rest of the season. Maybe somebody gets injured. Okay. Right. And this is his debut match. And as you probably piece together at this point, his debut in MLS ends with him getting a red card in 45+2. It is an unmitigated disaster. It is a gamble by Columbus Crew that they are going to enter this match with no goalkeeper on the bench because they didn't want to, maybe they didn't even have the room in terms of the financial cap limit or whatever to call up one of the reserve goalkeepers and give them a full contract. After all, it's only one game. Don't lie, if you were playing FIFA or Football Manager or whatever, you would probably ride it out with one game. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You're playing one game without a backup goalkeeper. But Murphy's Law. If it can happen, it will happen, right? And it did. And they rolled the dice, and they lost real hard. But I will say, okay, the rule's real stupid. This match was rescheduled because Columbus was succeeding. They had a lot more matches to play than the average MLS team. Not to mention the matches the reserve goalkeepers were called up for weren't even MLS matches. They were CONCACAF matches, specifically because CONCACAF had a rule that meant that they had to have 3 goalkeepers up on the first team in the first place. Which there's so many extenuating circumstances. And Columbus Crew made it clear that they actually petitioned the league. Right, they petitioned the league to try and get extra call-ups for their youth goalkeepers, and the league just said no, which is just dumb, right? Like, I don't know why the league wouldn't try to find a way to work this out. I know that you've got your collective bargaining agreement, but there are always, when you hammer those sorts of things out, situations that don't make a lot of sense. And there should be an emergency goalkeeper exception because it avoids the type of ridiculousness that happened. You've got a team in a title race, and all of a sudden Zawadzki, who's a guy that plays in the field, is stepping in goal, right? He's got his teammates trying to fire him up. He's putting it on, and he's got to put it on for more than 45 minutes. I mean, he's still wearing the team bottoms. Right, he's just put on a goalkeeper jersey and slapped the oven mitts on, and he's trying to make a play. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's not fair competition anymore once you run out of goalkeepers. And obviously, Columbus maybe could have found a way to end up with a goalkeeper on the bench, but they shouldn't have to. Columbus has 6 goalkeepers on its roster, right, and 5 of them are healthy. Okay, in the fact that you weren't able to use any one of those 5 because they rescheduled it to the middle of an international window because you had this rule that you couldn't bring up the other 2 people. It's ridiculous. It's just not, it's not in the spirit of the sport, and it's just, it makes a game, it makes a joke of the actual match. If I was a Columbus fan, I'd be incensed. But because I'm not, I think it's hilarious because this guy comes in and immediately that free kick, he concedes the free kick from the foul. He ends up making 2 saves, which fair play to him. Yeah, this is not a situation where anything is expected of you. So the fact that you made 2 saves is good. But Seattle Sounders ends up scoring 4 goals after the guy gets sent off and he comes in to try and do something, right? 6 shots on target, 4 goals over the back half of the match, and a field player playing in goal for 50 minutes while the team is a man down. I don't know of a lot of examples in the world of football where a field player has been in goal for longer than that. But the confluence of all of the stupidity of various people involved in this situation to MLS not granting the exemption produced a spectacular spectacle that very nearly distracted me from San Marino winning its first international match. Congratulations to them, by the way.